Welcome everybody to Corporate Services Committee meeting held on the 15th September 2023. I'll call this meeting open at 9 a.m. and we'll start with any applications for attendance via video link.
Nil, Mr. Chair.
Are there any apologies?
Councillor Flaherty is still on leave and Councillor Burns has asked to, has advised that he'll be absent today.
Have a mover for Councillor Burns here. Councillor McKenzie seconded myself, and we'll move along to disclosures of interest.
There's been none received so far, Mr. Chair.
Very good. And there being no public participation, I think I'll hand over to Mr. Phelps and his Finance Committee reports, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll just run through the Corporate Services 9.1 report. So on page 3 there, right down the bottom, you can see there that for the period end of August 23, the second month into the new financial year, we've got a positive variance to budget already of about $2.5 million in comparison to about $250,000 in July. The main variations for that, if you look on page 4, there's a couple of items in here that have come out of the blue, meaning the initial grant funding milestones for the Bellman Hangar and also the Horse Interpretive Centre business case. So effectively $1 million of that positive variance comes from those two grant milestones that have been received. Our waste revenue is higher by about $360,000 in the first part of the year, which is quite pleasing. We've had a bit more annual domestic charges. So obviously with our budgeting coming through, we've had a lot more people on the actual curbside collection route. So we've been able to secure that. Plus also our landfill disposal revenue for the first 2 months is up slightly, which is also pleasing from that point of view. Our water supply revenue is also higher by 155. Again, it's the annual access charges coming through. So obviously as we come through, there's a few pensioner concessions to be made into those that will reduce them down, but they'll end up being positive to budget coming through, and we'll put it through a proposed vote over the course of the coming months in regards to those. Our non-operating revenue and expenditure is down by about $180,000 at the moment. Internal fleet hire is still low by $180K in the first 2 months. So we're going through reviewing that fleet utilisation being such an early part of the year and trying to identify why that is out with the budget, and we'll complete that review coming through. And that review will include also a review of all our utilisation of all our plant for council. Operating expenditure is higher by about $470,000. Our quarry costs are a little bit higher by about nearly $100,000. The cost of blasting earlier than expected. So out at the Kewen pit, we've gone in and actually blasted some material out, and that's just been done a few months earlier than anticipated. Local roads maintenance is higher by about $190,000. Obviously, the cost of continuing with the bit of the flood restoration works, which is fully grant funded. So as those works are being completed, we should see some grant funding coming through in the months after completing the works. Sewer mains maintenance is also high by about $135,000. We're looking at those costs and just seeing what makes that up. I think there's a bit of relining that's gone into that maintenance hole, which we'll take out and put into our capital area. Our relining works is pretty well picked up again coming through, and we have to take up a vote probably in September in regards to those works because they weren't budgeted for initially. So as we'll see coming through down into our capital works expenditure area, there's about $1.4 million positive to budget at the moment. The Moonam Brook Road construction is lower by about $1.6 million. So currently it's behind schedule due to sourcing of suitable gravel out at the site. So we have now sourced some gravel, and that project will continue on, but it's been delayed by probably a couple of months to finalisation. We were hoping to get done by the end of September, but now that it's more likely to be the end of November, hopefully, given no wet weather work coming through. Our regional and local heavy patch program. This is effectively the funding that the government provided for the pothole repair program. It's behind budget at the moment by about 355,000. It's pretty well being delayed just due to a contractor having to go back and do a bit of reworks. So obviously when we've gone through and done the Q&As or the quality assurance in regards to the work that they've completed, wasn't quite up to scratch. So we've made the contractor go back at their cost to go back and rework that and fix the issues that come through. Obviously, we've got we have an invoice actually sitting in the mix at the moment, and it's pending. So it'll catch up pretty quick as we're coming through. And as I mentioned with the sewer mains maintenance, our relining works are higher by about nearly 400,000. We had a new relining project kick off. So we'll go through and we'll bring in a vote coming out of the sewer fund. So it'll be funded straight from the sewer fund itself. So as you can see, there's a $2.5 million positive variance to budget. The budget position, there's no votes coming through or surrenders coming through for the current month of August. Obviously, we'll make a few more votes and surrenders coming through in the September quarter reports once everything's pretty well into a fresh new year, and there's a bit of a trend happening. Bank funds and investment report at the end of August, we had nearly $33 million in total funds, of which $31.5 million was sitting in our investment portfolios coming through, which a schedule is attached to the report. Loan schedules sitting at the moment an outstanding balance of $31.25 million. So again, there's no loan facilities considered to be applied for in the 23-24 year. And there's a schedule to the end of August also attached to the report. Our capital works expenditure report at the moment still sitting at the $66 million as we brought down in the 23-24 budget. Based on that, we spent about $4.3 million to date, which is about 6.5% for the first 2 months. So obviously it's one area where we'll continue to monitor coming through and see how we go for the rest of the year. Obviously, we have a number of major projects which will have a lot of lumpy expenditure expended during the year. So we'll go through and we'll take a realistic look at that at the end of September and again at the end of December as we're coming through, so we can identify any works that have been delayed either through supply of contractors, materials, or weather conditions. So obviously we'll be very mindful of that and give the committee a forewarning if there's any major changes to the budget coming in. From that, we're just moving into our schedules on page 8 through to 11. Here we've got just the fund and the actual service areas operations. Just for your information, overall there's no votes or surrenders, so it's pretty well sitting on track as we're coming through for the budget itself. Moving into our cash side of things on page 12. As you can see, we received a lot of funds coming in the end of June. We've been expending those coming through. The first 2 months of the new financial year normally are very lukewarm from revenue side of things. We get the rates at the back end of August, though, which is always a benefit. Moving into our schedule for our investments. Here you can see the $31.5 million that we've got coming through, all sitting pretty good from the rate point of view. We've got one that's still sitting at 1.4%, and one at 2.87%, and then 3.5%, and then anything above 4% from there. So we're actually starting to see a bit of traction in regards to our investment revenue side of things. Loan schedules on page 14, as raised in the previous meeting by Councillor Burns, you'd like to see the annual interest payable on those loans coming through. So we've included a column in there that depicts how much interest is actually paid on those loan facilities for this current financial year 23-24.
And thanks for including that, Mr. Phelps. It's nice to just compare there, and we do have a positive relationship there between our interest rates in our investments held and our in our loan schedule. 1.44 million yield on our investment compared to, it's not there, but about 1.1 million on our loan annual interest payments. So that's a positive variance of 300. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And moving on now from that schedule, then we just walk our way through the summary of our capital works expenditure to the end of August, just to give you an idea of how projects are performing at this point in time and what projects we have got coming forward into the new budget year. So as you can see on the bottom line there, the $4.3 million in total actual spend, that's on page 23. And the variance to date of 1.4 million. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other questions?
No, Mr. Phelps, and thank you for that. If we're happy to move on, Councillor, could I have a mover on? Thank you, and I'll second that. All in favour? You guys have it, and we'll move on to the next area of business, please, Mr. Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's just more or less a property update. Pretty well, the General Manager might want to make some comments in regards to this report.
Yeah, look, I'll probably give you a quick update. The good news is all our commercial properties are now leased. The most recent being, I think it's RB Cellars in the Campbell's Corner, has just taken occupation of the old Kodak shop, so that's been released. So back up to full commercial leases. All our residential properties are leased. Now vacant land has leases over it, so they're all heading in the right direction. The land that is in the property development stages, being the Hill Street properties and the land on Sermon Street and Bunnan Road, are all progressing with the consultant that's been providing us with the work in regard to expressions of interest for developing that land, as well as Aberdeen. The two parcels of land in Hill Street that require, there's actually 3 lots, but two addresses. Those parcels of land that require reclassification were put to the Environment and Community Services meeting on Tuesday and were recommended by that committee to come back to council. So they will come to council at the 25th September meeting for consideration by council for reclassification. There is a process to go through once council's resolved to reclassify, which it does involve ministerial approval and also getting community consultation process, but it needs to go through the council heap first before we commence that. So they're progressing. Mr. Phelps and I have met with the consultant and a number of the people who responded to the EOI submissions for property development, and we've got a number of them that would be suitable for different projects. So we're not looking at just a single provider, we're looking at maybe a couple of different providers for different projects in that regard. Once we've received some more feasibility study work from them, and that's part of their task, is to give us a bit more confirmation around the returns and the costs of those projects. Once we have that, we'll assess those and we'll keep council informed of the progress of those projects. That's probably the highlights, but if there's anything in the report that the councillors have noticed and want to ask questions about, I'm happy to answer them or take them on notice, depending on my ability to answer it.
With that level of confidence, just curious, I do get asked regularly on the Aberdeen Perth Street development. How are we progressing there? When are we likely to see a grader up that road?
Yeah, it's still some way off. That is one of the parcels that we've gone out for expressions of interest in. And as you know, there's 27 lots already approved for construction. So we're just looking for a partner that can do the actual infrastructure works, the pipes, pits, roads, and the like. As part of the expression of interest, we also asked if a developer was interested in doing house and land package work as well. So rather than just sell the lots, we could sell house and land packages as a combined package. That's being looked at fairly seriously too by one of the respondents to the ELY. So that's what we've been exploring. And we're just, as I say, we're just looking at the feasibility around just doing the work and selling the lots and just seeing how the market takes that, or whether there is actually a financial benefit both to the council and the developer to do the house and land. And that may actually also speed up housing in the Shire as well. So we'll be able to probably give you a bit more information possibly at the next meeting in regard to the responses we get back on the feasibility around that. Separately to that, the government has released precinct funding in the last couple of weeks, and it's looking promising that some councils may be able to tap into that. And precinct is a very loose definition. We still don't know under the guidelines what that means, but it could be a housing precinct or a land precinct that sort of encourages economic development. It could be commercial precinct. It could be, I guess, even an agricultural precinct. So we're looking at whether or not we can tap into some of that funding. That may also accelerate some of the development, and it may even allow us to go beyond the 27 lots and continue to develop that parcel of land at Aberdeen. So there's some of the prongs that are in the fire at the present time. Don't have a solution, a single solution. There's a couple of things that we're pursuing, and we'll be able to give some more certainty probably in the next meeting.
Thank you. That sounds like there's some positive developments there. Just curious on the precinct. Is that? I mean, it's loosely discussed at the moment, but will we be able to have precincts for each township, or is it limited to a certain space?
To the best of my knowledge, there's no limitation. It's an open grant, so you can apply at any time. So it's open while ever there's funds still left in the grant bucket. Our intent is to probably look at what the precincts around the local government, our local government area are that require works that are predominantly already in our planning process. So we're not looking at picking up new projects. It's trying to fund projects that we're already attempting to deliver and use this funding to accelerate that, because it'll give us funding to potentially upgrade infrastructure that is required, that is currently stifling development. So water and sewage infrastructure, for example, we can't in some instances do much expansion because there are limitations on the current capacity of our infrastructure. If this funding were to allow that to occur, you could then look at some of the land use in and around various towns and how that may allow for further, whether it be housing or commercial development or other types of investment. It could be industrial investment in the townships. So as you know, there's a number of infrastructure constraints within all of our towns. And if this funding was to be used for those infrastructure projects, you could then start to see those areas further develop.
It sounds very promising, and thanks for the update there. That's very helpful. Now, everything being equal there, if I've got a mover, I'll second that. All those in favour, aye. And then we can move on to the corporate 9.3 White Park Management and Development Committee for noting what's happened down there. Councillor McKenzie, are you happy with discussions down there? And it's fantastic to see that facility being utilised as much as it is, and all power to it going forward. I think it's it's at the entrance of our township here, and very prominent for those driving past or driving into, and it's a very interesting space. But on that, of a mover on that, and I'll second that. All those in favour? The ayes have it. Responses to previous questions. There's a couple of questions here from myself and Councillor Burns. Mr. Phelps.
Yes, through the chair. Just there's one response there, just extracting the data in regards to the actual comparison between the contractor plant hire spend compared to what council does. So it was a bit of an arduous task of trying to gather out a bit of information, and it's not an exact science coming through. Obviously, with supply of plant and equipment from contractors, you can generally work out what the hours that they're working and so forth, but it's they have a lot of crews as well, so we had to extrapolate out the day rates to hourly rates and so forth. The end result, just from the wet hire side of things, council planned for this is for the 22-23 year, council plant hire had about 31,000 hours, so it's 31,337 hours in plant hire in regards to the same quantitation to the actual plant hire, contractor plant hire. So I looked at it on the basis of pretty well the construction industry side of things, left out all the utes and all the other tipper trucks, the work parks and gardens trucks and everything like that. So it was mainly about the road infrastructure side of things. So overall, the council plant hire was about 31,000 hours, and it cost us about $3.5 million. That's with a man on it at $50 an hour. So, and the contract plant hire was 25,528 hours at $3.5 million as well. So effectively what that entails is that we could probably do more hours of work compared to what the contractor can do when you look at it from that point of view. But it's a pretty well an even split. So it was pretty well an even split of 50-50 coming through, which was an interesting because I thought that the contracted plant hire may have been a lot higher than what council staff was.
Thank you for extrapolating that data. I hope I gave you something of interest to look through there. That's I know you're going through reviews at the moment of plant and the relevance of perhaps some. So hopefully that can be of assistance.
Yes, through the chair, that it's quite helpful, and it gives us a bit of a baseline as well of where we go with the review overall of our plant utilisation coming into the coming year and future.
I do have another question. Just on roads, we're hearing a lot, and everybody in maintenance is suffering from these massive increases of prices. I wonder if it's possible to get a breakdown of the current road costings. We saw the other day a kilometre of roads now up to $2 million construction. The old figure was about $1 million back in the day, but everybody's seen these exorbitant price increases. I wonder if we can get a breakdown of where those price increases have come from throughout those line items within road construction, and what we need to focus on pricing wise there.
Yeah, through the chair, we should be able to drag some sort of information together. I know that we're looking at different benchmarking and so forth in regards to road constructions at the moment and trying to get an average across multiple shires. So it's one of the items that is high on council's agenda to actually look at and trying to reduce the costing of the road construction, which has jumped massively over the course of the last 5 years.
Certainly. And if you find answers to how you make those cheaper, can you please let me know? Because I'm suffering the same. But no, thank you. If we could do that, it'd be interesting to clarify those points and where those price pressures have come from. Have we got any more? Have you got any questions on that or comments on that there, councillor?
No.
That being the case, of a mover on those questions, councillor McKenzie, and I'll second that, and all those in favour would be the two of us. Thank you, and I think that leads us to the end of our corporate services today, unless we have any further questions or comments. And management is happy today. Wonderful. I'll call this meeting closed at 9:26. Thank you all for your attendance today.